So if Republicans do win the majority in the House, that would mean that Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan would be set to take over the Judiciary Committee that would give him power to launch investigations and even a possible impeachment of President Biden. Congressman Jordan, now the ranking member on the Judiciary Committee, joins me now. Congressman Jordan, always good to have you with us. Thanks for being here today. So what would be your, obviously that's a big deal. And all of these investigations would take a lot of your time. So what would your priority be? What would you address first? And what do you think is most important?
By far the most important is the Justice Department that's now political. You cannot have a political Justice Department and also have a free society, a free country. So that is the most important thing. And we're gonna dig into this. Martha, we have had, and I've said this many times, we've had now over 14 FBI agents come to us asking for whistleblower status, talking about how political that place is. That has to change. Because if you have a political Justice Department, if you don't have equal treatment under the law, every single liberty we enjoy as Americans is in jeopardy. You think about the 5 fundamental rights we have under the First Amendment: your right to practice your faith, your right to assemble, right to petition, freedom of the press, freedom of speech. They're all in jeopardy if the Justice Department doesn't treat people equally under the law. And right now that is not happening, as evidenced by the fact 14 FBI agents have come to us seeking whistleblower status and talking about how political things are there.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they were upset about the way the Hunter Biden case was handled. You think about the fact that parents at school board meetings were labeled as potential terrorists. You think about what happened to some of the rioters after the Black Lives Matter, or even people who have been vandalizing pro-life centers.
Yeah.
It is very curious why some of these are pursued and some are not. A lot of people out there would like to know, though, what your plans are with regard to Hunter Biden, and what about this question of impeaching President Joe Biden? Here's what the former President Obama had to say about that on the campaign trail. I'm going to let you get right in after this. Let's play it.
Okay.
If they get control of Congress, they will spend the next 2 years investigating President Biden and their political opponents. That's all they want to do. They see it as payback. They've already got prepared that they're going to impeach Biden. They're not sure what for, but apparently that's beside the point.
What do you say to that?
Well, a question on impeachment, that'll be decided by the whole conference. Here's what I want to focus on. 2 years ago this month, 51 former intel officials signed a letter that said the Hunter Biden story had, quote, all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. That was BS. People knew it at the time it was BS, but they put that together, and that became the pretext for suppressing that story so that we, the people, couldn't have access to important information just days before the most important election we have, election for President of the United States. How did that get put together? How did many of those people still have a security clearance? Were they talking to the FBI? Because remember, the FBI went and talked to Mark Zuckerberg and said, oh, Facebook, you might want to keep this off. This has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. That impacted the election. And I thought my colleague Matt Gaetz made a great point in committee a couple weeks ago. He said, when is the FBI not going to influence an election? 2016, they spied on President Trump's campaign. 2018, it was the Mueller investigation. 2020, they suppressed that Hunter Biden story, called it Russian disinformation. And in 2022, they raided the home of a former president 91 days before the midterm election. So why don't the FBI just stay out and quit being political and let the country decide, let the people decide who's going to represent them? So that is something we need to dig into for the sake of our country. We need to get an answer to how they put that together and suppress that key story. That's something I want to look into.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think a lot of people would look at that, and they do want to have confidence in the FBI, and they have seen sort of the picking and choosing that appears very partisan. And you have whistleblowers, as you say, from the FBI who say that they were told basically, put that Hunter Biden case aside. We're too close to an election. We don't want to be involved in it. And as you point out, there's a good argument that they've been involved in pretty much every election in the past 6 or 8 years or so. With regard to Hunter Biden, what would your intentions be?
Well, that investigation will be run out of the Oversight Committee. I don't think it'll be headquartered in, in the Judiciary Committee. I think my good friend and colleague, Mr. Comer, will run that investigation if, in fact, the American people put us in the majority, which I think they're going to do. So it'll be there. I know Jamie is very concerned about these 150 suspicious activity reports that the Treasury Department has. We'd like to know what those say. So that's something I think we'll focus on as well relative to the Biden family, quote, business operation. All this is important, but the broad picture is Joe Biden has this narrative where he's called half the country fascist and extremist, and the FBI seems to be trying to make sure that that is the narrative that they get. This is what what these whistleblowers have told us. There's even a purging. Some of these guys have said they're trying to get rid of folks in the FBI who have conservative beliefs. So that is part of this broad concern we have with the Justice Department, specifically the FBI. And we're going to investigate the specific matters and that broad general concern.
Well, that's an appropriate role of Congress to make sure that the judiciary and the FBI are treating everyone in this country fairly. And we'll see what happens. Jim Jordan, good to see you. We're headed to your home state tomorrow, and we are looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
I'm glad you're coming. All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.